kind of hop in our hot tub time machine. The draft was held in Vancouver. Look at this top 5. Pretty sweet. A lot of good players there.
Not as sweet as the lid on Owen Nolan, I tell you that much. Yeah. That is a doozy of a hat.
That is special. I would like that hat. With that being said, guys, we do this every once in a while. We do this whole redraft thing. You can do it in all types of sports. 1990 NHL redraft. If we did a new top 5, what are we going to do, guys? What are you thinking?
All right. Well, listen, it's always good to look back, and with the we've got the benefit of 29 years of history now to go through and
we should not have any misses.
We should.
On this pick.
Yeah, it would be bad for us to miss. You know, funny thing about Jagr, though, he went 5. The last day of that season, the Islanders and Penguins flopped, and the Islanders ended up making the playoffs. Penguins missed. In the end, they won because they ended up with the 5th pick. The Islanders picked 6. They ended up with Scott Sijens. Didn't go as well for them, but we will have a better crack at it now. Let's start at number 5 as we look back. And number 5 for me.
And we agree on this one.
We agreed on most of these, but number 5, we both picked
Dougie Weight. I mean, a dynamic offensive player. You forget that he started with the Rangers and he was dealt to Edmonton for McTavish and those guys that helped the Rangers win the '94 Cup. But he was a dynamic player out of Lake Superior State, just a gifted offensive player. Maybe best known for his highlight reel goals in Edmonton, his time in St. Louis. Sneaky good offensive player, much better passer than goal scorer, but over 1,000 points. One of the best American-born players in the history of the game. One of the best teammates, one of the best guys that we've known. He's a solid 5 on the redraft for me.
And a great playmaker, one of the best American playmakers ever. And his son is in the draft this year, so we'll see what happens with Danny Weight.
Go get him.
Perhaps he gets selected this year. Number 4, we have a little
discrepancy here,
but it's the same people.
Yes.
So you know, on my side, number 4, I like Big Walt, Keith Tkachuk, and that's who I'm going to put at number 4. You've got a different guy there.
I have Tricky Dicky Zubov. I mean, he was such
Sergei Zubov.
Sergei Zubov was such a good player. A nightmare to play against. You forget how good he was. You remember him with Dallas in '99 winning the Cup. 94 with the Rangers, he led that team in scoring in the regular season. A cup-winning team as a defenseman.
Remember it well.
He would sit there on the blue line and just dare you. Just try to come near me, and I'll just outweight you, throw it through your legs down to Brett Hull or Mike Modano or Mark Messier, and they would score a goal. Such a good player. Make a very strong case he belongs in the Hockey Hall of Fame. I had him at 4 in my redraft. Just the worst to play against because he was so talented with the puck.
Yeah, and you know, we're going to have the Hall of Fame announcement right here on the NHL Network next Tuesday, I believe it is. And Sergei Zubov would be a guy that I think...
not be out of place.
Yeah, he would not be out of place at all if he were to make the Hall of Fame. A great, great player for a long time, so we're hoping for that. I had him at 3, you had him at 4, but we flipped spots. And
now at 3, I had Tkachuk.
You can't really go wrong, though. I mean, Keith Tkachuk was a terrific player, quintessential power forward, Johnny. I mean, over 500 goals, one of the great American players, and, boy, a horse to play against. I mean, he was somebody you just did not want to be running into him in the corners or in front of the net.
In an era where you needed a little nasty to create your space to score the kind of goals that he scored, Big Walt was vicious in a good way. I mean, he did what he had to do to score goals. He didn't care. He was a goal scorer. He's going to go through you, around you, over you, put his stick wherever he had to put it to make sure to get his blade on a puck in around the net. One of the best American-born goal scorers of all time. Number 3 for me, number 4 for you.
And the only reason I had Zubov higher is I always feel like those defensemen, they have such an impact on the game, and Zubov was able to win in 2 different places, in Dallas and with the New York Rangers, so that weighed in my thinking, but really, could you go wrong? No. Could you go wrong?
But we had an obvious number 2 pick now.
Any other year, he'd be 1.
Probably, but Marty Brodeur.
Of course.
Our consensus number 2. You can run down the laundry list of NHL records that he holds for wins and the shutouts and everything else that he did, the Stanley Cups he won, the face of the franchise that he was for the better part of 20 years. And in an era where we don't think goalies can play 50 games anymore. He was banging off 75 in his sleep for a better part of a decade.
He wanted to play every game.
He wanted no part of sharing the net, and why would you when you won as often as he did?
Yeah, one of the great goaltenders, maybe the greatest goaltender of all time, certainly statistically.
He's got Vezina.
Yeah, not so bad. He did pretty well. Stanley Cups, and with Brodeur too. Remember that it was Trevor Kidd and Marty Brodeur in that draft year. Devils ended up, I believe, Kidd went ahead of Brodeur. Trevor Kidd was a pretty good goalie. Marty Brodeur was one for the ages. Ended up being a good pick for the Devils. And number 1,
the mullet,
had to be
who went 5 in the initial draft.
Jaromir Jagr. I mean, different time in the history of this game, too, because if this was now when we see all these players more and you know the European players better and you knew they could come over right away, Jaromir Jagr probably would have been number 1.
Yeah, maybe a bit of an unknown back then, but boy, did he step in, and we know what he's done. He had the frame to play in that era, but the skill to play in any era. And I don't know where he ranks on your all-time Mount Rushmore of offensive players in the history of the NHL, but you look at where he is, second in the history of the game in points. He would have had more than 2,000 had he not left for a few years to go play back in the KHL. He's right up there with the best of the best. Whoever you think those guys are, whether it's Lemieux, whether it's Gretzky, Jagr belongs in that conversation for longevity and greatness. Yeah. Obvious number 1 pick.
Yeah, he had some guys have 1 act in their career, some guys have 2. I think he had 3 or 4. I mean, it was amazing how long.
A lot of
Jagr
curtain calls.
No
come back for more.
One of the great players. So there you go, Keith. There's our redraft from 1990. We'll see what holds, what we have in store for us in Vancouver this go around. The draft starting on Friday.